The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with angry voices. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the center podium, his red scales gleaming under the bright lights. His yellow eyes swept across the room as he spoke in a voice that made everyone. "Listen, the human problem ends today," he said. His words echoed through the massive chamber on Nexus Prime. "For too long, Earth has ignored our laws. They treat all species as equals when they should bow to Draconian rule." In the far corner of the hall, a small group of alien diplomats shifted nervously. They had hoped this day would never come. The Draconians had ruled the galaxy for over 300 years. When they decided to end something, it stayed ended. "The Sixth Fleet will leave for Earth tomorrow," Zethkar continued. 200 ships, the greatest war fleet ever assembled. Earth will surrender or burn. Far across the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his small office aboard the space station New Horizon. The coffee was terrible, but it was hot and it kept him awake during the long night shifts. His computer screen beeped. With an incoming message marked urgent. Jake read the message twice before he believed it. The Draconians were coming. Not just a few ships to make threats. The entire Sixth Fleet. He grabbed his communication device and called Admiral Lisa Shun right away. "Admiral, we have a problem," Jake said when she answered. "The Draconians are sending everything they have." Lisa Chun had been expecting this call for months. She was sitting in her quarters aboard the command ship Defender, looking out at the stars. She had fought in 3 wars before taking command of Earth's defense forces. She knew what was coming. "How long do we have?" she asked. "The message says they left Nexus Prime 6 hours ago. That gives us maybe 4 days before they reach Earth." Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. 4 days to prepare for the end of the world. "Call an emergency meeting. Get Ben Parker and Kate Sullivan. We meet in 1 hour." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Ryan Hayes was working late in his laboratory. The lab was huge, filled with machines that hummed and sparked with strange energy. Ryan had been working on something called Ghost Protocol for 3 years. It was his life's work, but he had never tested it on anything bigger than a mouse. His assistant, Amy Rodriguez, came into the lab carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You should go home, Ryan. Your wife is worried about you." Ryan looked up from his computer screen. His hair was messy and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. "I can't stop now, Amy. The quantum field generators are almost ready. If my calculations are right, this could change everything." Amy set down the coffee and looked at the massive machines around them. "What exactly does Ghost Protocol do?" "It moves things," Ryan said, "not from one place to another. It moves them out of our reality completely, like making them disappear into another dimension. That sounds dangerous." "Everything worthwhile is dangerous," Ryan replied. He turned back to his computer and continued typing code. 3,000 miles away in Washington, President Amy Watson was sitting in the Oval Office with her top advisors. The room was quiet except for the sound of rain against the windows. Everyone was reading the same report about the Draconian fleet. "What are our options?" the president asked. General Mike Taylor, the oldest man in the room, spoke first. "We have maybe 50 ships that could fight. The Draconians have 200. Our weapons are good, but theirs are better. We would lose. What about evacuation?" Asked Secretary of Defense Carol White. "Where would we go?" General Taylor replied. "The Draconians control most of the galaxy. There's nowhere to run." President Watson stood up and walked to the window. She watched the rain and thought about the millions of people who would die if Earth surrendered. She thought about the billions more who would become slaves to the Draconian Empire. "We fight," she said. "We may lose, but we fight." 2 days later, the Draconian fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. War Admiral Carnthos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Flame of Dominion. He was 7 feet tall with black scales and golden eyes. He had conquered 12 worlds for the Empire. Earth would be his 13th. "Begin the approach," told his crew. "Send the message to Earth. They have 72 hours to surrender completely." The message was broadcast on all frequencies. Every human on Earth heard it. Every space station, every ship, every colony received the same words. Surrender now or face total destruction. Back on the space station New Horizon, Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet through his telescope. The ships were massive, dark shapes moving slowly through space like hungry sharks. He had never seen so many warships in one place. "They're beautiful," said Commander Kate Sullivan, who was standing next to him. "In a terrifying way," Jake nodded. "Beautiful and deadly. Each one of those ships could destroy a city." On Earth, President Watson appeared on television to address the world. She stood at her desk in the Oval Office, looking calm and strong, but inside she was terrified. "My fellow citizens," she said, "we face our greatest challenge. The Draconian Empire demands our surrender. They want us to become their slaves. I say no. We have never bowed to tyrants before. We will not start now." In his laboratory, Ryan Hayes worked without sleeping. His quantum field generators were ready, but he had never tested them on anything real. The mathematics looked right, but mathematics. And reality were different things. Amy Rodriguez brought him more coffee. "The fleet will be here in 18 hours, she said. "I know," Ryan replied. "Ghost Protocol will be ready." "Are you sure it will work?" Ryan looked at his machines and then at Amy. "No," he said, "but it's the only chance we have." Above Earth, the Draconian fleet moved into attack positions. War Admiral Carnthos was confident. He had crushed every enemy he had ever faced. The humans had fought bravely in small battles, but they had never faced the full might of the Draconian Empire. "Open a channel to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them. Their time is up." The countdown had begun. In 12 hours, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy would attack Earth, but in his mountain laboratory, Ryan Hayes was about to change the course of galactic history forever. The 72 hours passed like a bad dream. All across Earth, people stayed close to their television screens and radios. Children were kept home from school. Families gathered together, not knowing if they would see another sunrise. President Amy Watson stood in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by her top advisors. The big screen on the wall showed the Draconian fleet hanging in space like a dark cloud. 200 ships, each one bigger than anything Earth had ever built. "Any word from the fleet?" she asked General Mike Taylor. War Admiral Carnthos sent. "One final message 10 minutes ago," the general replied. "He said Earth's time is up. They're moving into attack position now." On the Lunar Defense Station, Commander Kate Sullivan watched through her telescope as the enemy ships began to move. They were spreading out, forming a perfect circle around Earth. Each ship was positioning itself to hit a different target on the planet below. "They're going to hit everything at once," she said to her crew. "Every major city, every military base, every spaceport. They want to end this war in one attack." Kate opened a communication channel to Admiral Lisa Chun on the Defender. "Admiral, they're almost in position. Maybe 15 minutes until they're ready to fire?" Lisa's voice crackled through the speaker. "Copy that, Kate. All Earth ships, prepare for battle. We may not win, but we're going to make them pay for every shot." Captain Jake Morrison was aboard his ship, the Guardian, leading a small group of Earth vessels. They had moved between the Draconian fleet and Earth, ready to fight. Jake knew it was hopeless. His 20 ships against 200, but sometimes hope was all you had. "All ships, lock weapons on the nearest enemy vessel," Jake ordered. "We attack as soon as they make their move." Deep in his mountain laboratory, Dr. Ryan Hayes was making final adjustments to his quantum field generators. The machines filled the entire underground chamber, humming with power that made the air itself feel electric. Cables as thick as tree. Trunks carried energy from 3 nuclear reactors. Amy Rodriguez was at the control panel, her hands shaking as she watched the readings. "Power levels are at 95%, she reported. "The quantum field is stable." Ryan wiped sweat from his face. He had not slept in 3 days. "Ghost Protocol is ready," he said. "But Amy, I need you to know something. This has never been tested on anything this big. I don't know what will happen. Will it work? The math says yes." "But math and reality don't always agree." Amy looked at him with worried eyes. "What if it doesn't work?" "Then we're all dead in 10 minutes anyway." Above Earth, War Admiral Carnthos stood on the bridge of his flagship. Through the huge viewing window, he could see the blue and white planet below. Soon it would be a burning ruin, and the humans would learn what happened when they defied the Draconian Empire. "All ships report ready," his weapons officer announced. "Excellent," Carnthos said. "Target the capital cities first. Show them what happens to those who refuse to surrender." In the White House Situation Room, President Watson watched the enemy fleet complete its attack formation. She thought about her daughter, who was in college in California. She thought about her husband, who was somewhere in the city above, probably watching the sky. "Madam President," General Taylor said quietly, "they're about to fire." "I know," she replied. "God, help us all." On the lunar station, Kate Sullivan saw the Draconian ships beginning to glow as they charged their weapons. "All Earth ships, enemy vessels are powering up. They're about to attack." Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system. "This is it, everyone. Remember, we're fighting for our families, our friends, our world. Make every shot count." In his laboratory, Ryan Hayes put his hand on the activation switch. The quantum field generators were screaming with power now. The entire mountain was shaking from the energy they were producing. "Do it," Amy whispered. Ryan closed his eyes and pressed the switch. The effect was immediate. Every quantum field generator in the laboratory fired at the same time, creating a bubble of twisted spacetime that expanded outward faster than light itself. The energy burst was so powerful that it knocked out electrical systems across 3 states. Ryan collapsed to the floor, his body smoking from the electrical feedback. Amy ran to him, but he was barely conscious. "Did it work?" he mumbled. Amy looked at the control panel. All the screens were dead. Emergency lights flickered on as backup power kicked in. "I don't know," she said. "I can't see anything." On the lunar station, Kate Sullivan was staring at her screens in complete shock. 1 second, 200 enemy ships had been hanging in space around Earth. The next second, they were gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. What just happened? One of her crew members asked. Kate ran her sensors again, checking and rechecking the readings. Empty space, no ships, no debris. No energy signatures, nothing. "They're gone," she whispered. The entire fleet just disappeared. Jake Morrison was equally confused. His tactical display had shown 200 enemy targets. Now it showed 0. His communications officer was frantically checking the equipment. "Sir, our sensors are working fine," the officer reported. "But there's nothing out there. No ships, no wreckage, no trace of them at all." "That's impossible," Jake said. "Ships don't just vanish." But they had. Admiral Lisa Chun was receiving the same impossible reports from all her ships. Every sensor, every telescope, every piece of equipment was telling her the same thing. The Draconian fleet was gone. "Get me a direct line to Earth defense." "Command," she ordered. "I need to know what happened." On Earth, President Watson was getting the same reports. The Draconian fleet had simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no retreat, no trace. Her military advisors were running around the Situation Room, trying to make sense of the impossible. "Could they have retreated?" she asked. "No, ma'am," General Taylor replied. "Our deep space sensors would have detected them leaving." "They didn't go anywhere. They just stopped existing." War Admiral Carnthos had been about to give the order to fire when everything went black. One moment he was standing on his bridge, preparing to destroy Earth. The next moment, he was nowhere at all. His ships, his crew, his entire fleet had been displaced into a quantum parallel state. They existed, but not in the same reality as everyone else. They were trapped between dimensions, unable to move, unable to communicate, unable to do anything but drift in the endless void between worlds. Back on Earth, the celebration was beginning. News reports were spreading across the planet. The Draconian fleet was gone. Earth was safe. But no one knew why or how. In his laboratory, Ryan Hayes was slowly regaining consciousness. Amy helped him sit up, and he looked at the burned-out quantum field generators around him. "It worked," he said weakly. Ghost Protocol actually worked. Where did they go? Amy asked. Ryan smiled, despite his exhaustion. Somewhere else, he said. Somewhere they can't hurt anyone ever again. The galaxy's most powerful fleet had vanished without a trace, and the age of Draconian dominance was over. But the real consequences of this moment were only beginning to unfold. The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every major world had heard the impossible story. The Draconian Sixth Fleet, the most powerful military force in known space, had simply disappeared on the water world of Aquatica. The Cetacean Alliance held emergency meetings in their underwater cities. The whale-like beings had always feared the Draconians, but they had never dared to fight them. Now, floating in their deep ocean councils, they whispered about the humans who had made an entire fleet vanish. "If the humans can do this," said Elder Cathara, her massive form drifting through the blue water, "then perhaps the age of Draconian rule is ending." The insect worlds of the Hive Queens buzzed with activity. For centuries, they had been forced to give tribute to the Draconian Empire. Their billions of workers had labored to build ships and weapons for their overlords. Now, in the great hive chambers, the queens spoke in their clicking language about rebellion. Queen Zoct H had ruled her hive for 300 years. She had seen the Draconians destroy worlds that refused to obey. But now she sent a message to her sister queens across the galaxy. "The humans have shown us that the Draconians can be defeated. Perhaps it is time to stop being afraid." Even the synthetic collective, the machine intelligence that controlled dozens of robotic worlds, paused its endless calculations to analyze this new data. In their vast computer networks, artificial minds tried to understand how an entire fleet could simply cease to exist. "This changes all probabilities," the collective announced to its machine servants. "The Draconian Empire is no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. We must recalculate our expansion plans." But nowhere was the panic greater than on Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council. In the great council chambers, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered for an emergency session. The hall was filled with angry voices and frightened whispers. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the center of the chaos, his red scales pale with shock. For 3 days, he had been trying to contact the Sixth Fleet. Their communication systems were silent. Their tracking beacons were gone. It was as if they had never existed. "This is impossible," he told the assembled delegates. "Fleets do not simply disappear. There must be an explanation." The delegate from the Aquatic Alliance, a being that looked like a giant octopus, raised several arms to speak. "Perhaps the explanation is simple," it said in its gurgling voice. "Perhaps the humans are more dangerous than we thought." "Impossible," Zethkar replied. "The humans are a primitive species. They have no weapons that could destroy our fleet without leaving any trace." But doubt was growing in his mind. The Draconian Empire had ruled through fear and superior firepower. If the humans could make their greatest fleet disappear, what did that mean for Draconian power? On Earth, President Amy Watson was dealing with her own crisis. The entire planet was celebrating, but she knew the real problems were just beginning. She sat in a secure bunker beneath the White House. Meeting with her top advisors and military leaders, Admiral Lisa Chun had returned from space and was giving her report. "The enemy fleet is completely gone," she said. "Our sensors detect no trace of them anywhere in the solar system. But we still don't know what happened to them." "What about Dr. Hayes?" the president asked. "His quantum project was activated at the exact moment the fleet disappeared." General Mike Taylor shook his head. "Hayes is still unconscious. The feedback from his machines nearly killed him. His assistant says he was working on something called Ghost Protocol, but she doesn't understand how it works." Colonel Ben Parker, who had been investigating the disappearance, spoke up. "I've been to the coordinates where the fleet vanished. There's nothing there. No debris, no energy signatures, no evidence they ever existed. It's like they were erased from reality." President Watson looked around the table at her advisors. "So we have no idea what happened, and the entire galaxy is going to blame us for it." "That's about right," Admiral Chun replied. And it gets worse. We're receiving messages from alien governments across the galaxy. Some are congratulating us. Others are demanding to know what weapon we used. A few are threatening to attack us if we don't explain ourselves. Meanwhile, on the Lunar Defense Station, Commander Kate Sullivan was conducting her own investigation. She had been watching the enemy fleet through her telescopes when they vanished. She had recorded everything, but the recordings only showed empty space where the ships used to be. "It's like they were never there," she told her crew. "But I know they were. We all saw them." Captain Jake Morrison arrived at the lunar station to help with the investigation. He brought with him every piece of sensor data from the Earth Defense Fleet. Together, he and Kate analyzed the information, looking for any clue about what had happened. "Look at this," Kate said, pointing to a screen. Right before the fleet disappeared, there was a massive energy pulse from Earth. It lasted only a few seconds, but it was unlike anything I've ever seen. Jake studied the data. The pulse came from the Rocky Mountains. That's where Dr. Hayes has his laboratory. "You think he did this?" "I think he's the only one who knows what happened." Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was falling apart. Dozens of worlds that had been loyal to the Draconian Empire were now questioning their allegiance. The Draconians had always ruled through fear, but fear only worked when people believed in your power. Ambassador Zethkar watched as delegate after delegate stood up to speak against the Empire. The Cetacean Alliance announced they would no longer pay tribute. The Hive Queens recalled their workers from Draconian projects. Even some of the smaller human colonies declared their independence. "This is chaos," Zethkar said to his aide. "If we don't do something soon, the entire empire will collapse." "What can we do?" his aide asked. "We've lost our greatest fleet. We don't even know how the humans did it." For the first time in his life, Zethkar felt fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of the unknown. The humans had power beyond understanding, and they had used it to make the impossible happen. In his laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Ryan Hayes was finally waking up. His assistant Amy Rodriguez was beside him, monitoring his vital signs. The quantum field generators around them were burned out and smoking. "How long was I unconscious?" Ryan asked weakly. 3 days, Amy replied. "Ryan, the whole galaxy is in chaos. The Draconian fleet is gone, and everyone thinks we destroyed them." Ryan tried to sit up, but his body was still weak from the electrical feedback. "We didn't destroy them," he said. "We displaced them. They exist in a quantum parallel state, shifted just enough out of phase with our reality to be unreachable." "Are they dead?" "No, they're alive, but they're trapped between dimensions. They can't move, can't communicate, can't affect our reality in any way." Amy looked at the destroyed machines around them. "Can you bring them back?" Ryan was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he said finally. "The quantum displacement may be permanent, or it may be unstable. They could return to our reality at any time, or they could be trapped forever. What do we do now?" Ryan closed his eyes and thought about the consequences of what he had done. He had saved Earth, but he had also changed the entire galaxy. The old order was crumbling, and no one knew what would replace it. "Now," he said, "we figure out how to live in the new world we've created." Dr. Ryan Hayes was strong enough to walk by the time President Amy Watson arrived at his laboratory. The underground facility was a mess of burned equipment and smoking cables, but Ryan insisted on giving the president a full tour. "This is where it all began," Ryan said, leading the president and Admiral Lisa Chun through the main laboratory. 3 years ago, we found something in the asteroid belt. A derelict ship, unlike anything we had ever seen. Amy Rodriguez brought up a holographic display showing the ancient vessel. It was sleek and strange, with curves that seemed to bend in impossible ways. "The ship was dead," she explained. "No power, no life signs, but the technology inside was incredible." President Watson studied the image. "How old was it?" "At least 10,000 years, Ryan replied. "Maybe older. The materials were unlike anything in our periodic table, but the most amazing thing was the quantum phase drive. It could move through space by shifting between dimensions. Admiral Chun looked around at the destroyed equipment. And you built all this based on that ancient ship? We spent 3 years trying to understand how it worked, Ryan said. The quantum mathematics were incredibly complex. But eventually, we figured out how to create controlled quantum displacement fields. They walked to the center of the laboratory, where the largest machine sat silent and cold. It was the size of a small building with cables running to 3 separate nuclear reactors. This is the main quantum field generator, Ryan explained. It creates a bubble of altered spacetime that can displace matter into parallel dimensions. President Watson was beginning to understand. So the Draconian fleet is not destroyed. They are trapped in another dimension. Exactly, Ryan said. They exist in a quantum parallel state. Same location, different phase of reality. They are alive, but they cannot interact with our world. Amy Rodriguez pulled up another display showing complex equations. The problem is that the displacement is not completely stable. The quantum field is slowly breaking down. Eventually, the fleet could phase back into our reality. How long do we have? Admiral Chun asked. We don't know, Ryan admitted. It could be days, years, or centuries. The quantum mathematics are too complex to predict exactly. Meanwhile, on the Lunar Defense Station, Commander Kate Sullivan was making her own discoveries. She had been studying the sensor data from the moment the fleet disappeared, and she had found something important. Captain Jake Morrison arrived to help with the investigation. Kate showed him the readings on her computer screen. Look at this energy signature, she said. It matches the pulse we detected from Dr. Hayes' laboratory. But there are traces of it at the exact coordinates where the fleet vanished. Jake studied the data carefully. You mean the quantum field is still there? Faint traces of it, yes? If we modify our sensors, we might be able to detect the fleet even in their displaced state. They worked together for hours, adjusting the sensor arrays and fine-tuning the detection equipment. Finally, Kate's computer began showing new readings. There, she said excitedly. Can you see it? Jake looked at the screen. The readings were very faint, but they were there. Quantum echoes of 200 massive ships, existing in the same space but in a different phase of reality. My God, he whispered, they're still there. Kate opened a communication channel to Earth. Admiral Chun, we found them. The Draconian fleet is still at the same coordinates, just displaced into quantum parallel space. We can detect them with modified sensors. The news reached Dr. Hayes' laboratory within minutes. Ryan looked at the readings and nodded grimly. This confirms what I feared, he said. The displacement is not permanent. The quantum field is destabilizing. President Watson was understanding the full implications. If the fleet returns to our reality, we're back where we started. They'll attack Earth, and we won't have another chance to stop them? Actually, Ryan said, it's worse than that. The quantum displacement has affected their ship systems. When they return, they'll be very angry, and they'll probably have adapted their technology to prevent us from using the same trick again. Admiral Chun was already planning. We need to prepare for their return. And we need to figure out how to protect Earth without depending on technology that might not work twice. Colonel Ben Parker, who had been investigating the disappearance, Sights arrived with his own report. I've found something interesting, he said. The quantum traces are not uniform. Some areas are more stable than others. It's possible that parts of the fleet could return before the rest. Ryan studied Ben's data. That's very bad news. If ships return 1 or 2 at a time, we might be able to handle them. But if they all return at once, we'll face the same problem we had before. President Watson made a decision that would change everything. We need to tell the galaxy what we've learned. Not everything, but enough to show that we're not the aggressive power they think we are. That's dangerous, Admiral. Chun warned. If we reveal too much about the quantum technology, other species might try to duplicate it or defend against it. And if we don't reveal anything, the President replied, the galaxy will continue to see us as a threat. We need to find a middle ground. Amy Rodriguez had been working on a new project while the others talked. I think I have a solution, she said. We can create a demonstration that shows the basic principles of quantum displacement without revealing the specific technology. She brought up a holographic display showing a small test chamber. We can displace small objects under controlled conditions. Enough to prove that the technology exists, but not enough for anyone to duplicate it. Ryan looked at the plan and smiled. That's brilliant. We show them that we can make things disappear, but we don't show them how to do it themselves. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Zethkar was receiving his own intelligence reports. His spies had been monitoring Earth's communications, and they had learned that the humans were planning to reveal information about their weapon. They're calling it quantum displacement, his aide reported. The fleet is not destroyed. It's trapped in another dimension. Zethkar felt a mix of relief and terror. Relief that his people were still alive, terror that they were completely helpless. Can our scientists duplicate this technology? Our best quantum physicists are studying the reports. They say it's theoretically possible, but the mathematics are incredibly complex. It would take years to develop, maybe decades. And in the meantime, the humans could make any of our fleets disappear whenever they choose. Yes, sir. They have effectively neutralized our entire military advantage. Zethkar looked out at the stars and thought about the future of his empire. For centuries, the Draconians had ruled through superior firepower. Now, a single human scientist had made that firepower meaningless. Back on Earth, President Watson was preparing for the most important speech of her career. She would address not just the human race, but the entire galaxy. She would reveal the truth about the Draconian fleet and announce Earth's intentions for the future. We're going to tell them that we don't want to be conquerors, she told her. Advisors, we want to be partners, but we will defend ourselves against anyone who tries to oppress us. Dr. Ryan Hayes was making final preparations for the demonstration. In a few hours, representatives from dozens of worlds would witness the power of quantum displacement. They would see a small object disappear completely, then return to normal space. Are you ready? Amy asked him. Ryan looked at his equipment. One last time, as ready as we can be. This demonstration will either bring peace to the galaxy or start the biggest war in history. What do you think will happen? Ryan smiled wearily. I think we're about to find out what kind of species we really are. Are we conquerors like the Draconians, or are we something different? Something better? The answer would come soon enough. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth had the power to make entire fleets disappear, and more importantly, that Earth chose to use that power for defense rather than conquest. The old order was ending and a new age was about to begin. 3 months after the Draconian fleet vanished, the galaxy had changed completely. President Amy Watson stood in the new Earth Defense Headquarters, looking out at the stars through the massive viewing window. The building was constructed in orbit around Earth, a symbol of humanity's new role in galactic affairs. The Cetacean Alliance has officially joined the Terran Alliance, Admiral Lisa Chun reported as she entered the command center. That makes 43 worlds so far. President Watson nodded. The Terran Alliance was growing faster than anyone had expected. Species that had been oppressed by the Draconian Empire for centuries were eager to join an organization based on equality and cooperation instead of fear and conquest. What about the Hive Queens? Watson asked. Queen Zacht sent a message this morning. The insect worlds are withdrawing all their workers from Draconian projects. They want to discuss full membership in the Alliance. In another part of the space station, Dr. Ryan Hayes was working in his new laboratory. The Earth Defense Quantum Division had been established with him as its head scientist. The new facility was 10 times larger than his old mountain laboratory. With the most advanced equipment in the galaxy. Amy Rodriguez brought him a cup of coffee and a status report. The quantum displacement fields are stable on all test subjects, she said. We've successfully displaced and returned objects ranging from small rocks to entire asteroids. Ryan looked up from his computer screen. Any word from the Draconian fleet? Still trapped in quantum parallel space. The readings show their displacement field is continuing to weaken. But very slowly, Dr. Martinez thinks they could be trapped for decades. Or they could return tomorrow, Ryan said. The quantum mathematics are still unpredictable. Amy sat down next to him. Do you regret what we did? Ryan thought about the question. I regret that we had to do it. But I don't regret saving Earth. And I don't regret the changes it brought to the galaxy. Across the galaxy, those changes were happening everywhere. On dozens of worlds, species that had never dared to resist the Draconians were now declaring their independence. The old empire was crumbling, and something new was taking its place. Captain Jake Morrison was no longer a captain. He had been promoted to admiral and given command of the first Earth fleet to patrol beyond the solar system. His ships were equipped with quantum displacement devices, but they were used only for defense. When aggressive fleets approached peaceful worlds, they simply disappeared until their commanders agreed to negotiate. Admiral Morrison to Earth Defense, Jake spoke into his communication device. The Valyrian Republic has agreed to our terms. Their attack fleet is being returned to normal space. From his flagship, the New Dawn, Jake watched as 12 enemy warships suddenly appeared in space around him. They had been displaced for only 3 hours, but it was enough to convince their commanders that fighting was pointless. This is Admiral Morrison to Valyrian Fleet, Jake broadcast. Your ships are being returned to you unharmed. We suggest you use this time to reconsider your attack on the aquatic colonies. The response came quickly. Admiral Morrison, this is Commander Tekelin of the Valyrian Fleet. We agreed to negotiations. Our government was not aware of Earth's capabilities. Jake smiled. Negotiations are always preferable to fighting, Commander. Welcome to the new galaxy. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Zethkar was facing the collapse of everything he had known. The Galactic Council chambers were nearly empty now. Most of the member worlds had either joined the Terran Alliance or declared neutrality. The Draconian Empire, which had ruled for centuries, was reduced to a handful of core worlds. Zethkar had requested a secret meeting with President Watson, and to his surprise she had agreed. They met on a neutral station in deep space, with only a few advisors present. President Watson, Zethkar said, his proud voice now humble. I come to you not as a conqueror but as a representative of a fallen empire. What are your intentions toward the Draconian people? Watson looked at the alien who had once threatened to destroy her world. We have no desire to conquer or oppress anyone, Ambassador. That includes the Draconians. Then what do you want? Peace, Watson said simply. We want a galaxy where all species can live and grow without fear. We want trade based on mutual benefit, not tribute. We want exploration and discovery, not conquest. Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. And if the Draconian fleet returns from wherever you sent them? If they return peacefully, they will be welcomed. If they return with aggression, they will be displaced again. The choice is theirs. The meeting lasted for hours, but by the end, Zethkar had agreed to bring the Draconian proposal to his government. The proud warrior species would have to learn to live in a galaxy where might no longer made right. Back on Earth, Dr. Amy Rodriguez was making the discovery that would change everything again. She had been working on new applications for quantum displacement technology when she found something amazing. Ryan, you need to see this, she called excitedly. The quantum field can do more than just displace objects. It can transport them instantly across vast distances. Ryan looked at her data and felt his heart racing. You mean like teleportation? Better than teleportation. We can move entire ships from one star system to another in seconds. No travel time, no fuel consumption, no risk from hostile forces. The implications were staggering. If Earth could offer instant transportation across the galaxy, it would revolutionize trade, exploration, and communication. More importantly, it would give every species access to resources and opportunities they had never imagined. President Watson announced the breakthrough to the galaxy 6 months later. The Terran Alliance offers this technology freely to all peaceful species, she said in her broadcast. We will build transportation networks that connect every world that wants to join us. Distance will no longer be a barrier to cooperation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within weeks, hundreds of worlds applied for membership in the Terran Alliance. The old Empire borders meant nothing when ships could travel instantly between star systems. Commander Kate Sullivan. Now Admiral Sullivan was chosen to oversee the first joint human-alien crew. Her ship, the New Dawn, was equipped with the latest quantum transportation system. As they prepared for their maiden voyage to establish the first Alliance outpost, she reflected on how much had changed. "Remember when we thought the Draconian fleet was the end of the world?" she said to Jake Morrison, who was visiting before departure. Jake nodded. "Now it seems like it was the beginning of something much better." Kate looked out at the stars, knowing that each one might have worlds full of beings who were no longer afraid. "The age of empires is over," she said. "The age of cooperation has begun." Deep in quantum parallel space, the Draconian fleet still drifted between dimensions. War Admiral Carnthos and his crews were alive but trapped, waiting for the day they might return to a galaxy they would no longer recognize. When that day came, they would find a universe where their weapons were useless and their threats were meaningless. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more powerful. They had shown it a better way to live. Dr. Ryan Hayes stood in his laboratory, looking at the quantum field generators that had changed everything. The machines hummed quietly, ready to defend Earth, or transport allies across the galaxy. But most importantly, they stood as a symbol of what was possible when beings chose cooperation over conquest. The galaxy was at peace, and it would stay that way as long as Earth watched over it. The age of fear was over. The age of hope had begun.